Well, it is spring in my tiny suburban backyard, and I couldn't be more excited about it. Unfortunately, I've been swamped the past few weeks, and I didn't get to record several of the steps I've taken in the garden. But I did get all of those little seedlings, my tomatoes and my peppers, transplanted into my raised beds. It's been a cool, wet spring here in Texas, and as you can see, they are just taking off. So today on my way home from church, I picked up this beautiful little cherry tomato seedling so I can demonstrate how I put these tomatoes in my garden. Now, one of the best things about buying transplants from a garden center is they've already spent a lot of time outside on those shelves, and that means you don't have to harden them off before you put them directly into your garden. So what do I mean by hardening off? Well, remember, we tried to be good seedling parents. We provided them some simulated wind via a fan. We gave them some temperature fluctuations by removing the heat mat. We even gave them some direct sunlight exposure through a south-facing window. But the reality is, it's nearly impossible to prepare them fully for a spring day in Texas. I'm talking 40-mile-per-hour winds, 20, 30, 40-degree fluctuations in temperature, and direct sunlight fully overhead. So we use a process called hardening off, where we take those seedlings, and I like to place them in the exact spot in which I'm going to plant them so that they can get used to the sort of light and wind conditions that they're going to grow to maturity in. And over the course of 3 or 4 days, I'll set them out for 6, 7, 8 hours and bring them back in at night, just letting them get acclimated. If it's too windy or if it's too hot and they dry out too quickly and begin to wilt, I bring them back inside. It's sort of like dipping your toes in the water and splashing some up on you before you dive in the deep end. All right, let's take a look at this little fella and get it ready for the garden. Pretty healthy looking cherry tomato. Looks like the stem's good and sturdy, lots of green leaves, even got some flowers up here already. But we're actually going to go ahead and snap those flowers off with my thumb here. Reason being, when we transplant this in the garden, we want all of the plant's energy focused on reestablishing its roots before it begins putting energy into fruiting. All right, let me get my clippers real fast. Now remember, we've talked about this before, but when the stem of a tomato comes in contact with moisture and is covered with soil, it's going to grow roots all up and down this stem. So I'm actually going to trim off these lower leaves. Why? Because I'm going to put it all underground. That's going to help it develop a very strong, deep root system to get through the hot Texas summers. Now, I plan on growing this plant up a tomato stake. That means I want one single stem. You see these suckers in between the Y of the main stem and the leaves? Yep, we're just going to pinch those off. That's how we maintain a single stem running up the length of the stake. We'll talk a whole lot more about that in my next video that's dedicated to pruning. But for now, let's get this plant into the container. You can ignore the blackberry volunteer back there. I just haven't had the heart to pull it up yet. Well, I've already got this whiskey barrel planter filled with a combination of garden soil and compost and mulched over on top. And I've run a drip irrigation line to it, so it is ready to be planted. I do a lot of this kind of stuff because I don't have a lot of room in my yard, as you've seen, so this is a way to be somewhat decorative but still get more vegetables into the garden. Now, for years and years, I trenched my tomatoes. What does that mean? That means, well, I dug a little trench and I put my tomato stem down in there. Now, exposed to water and soil, of course, that means it grew roots all along that stem. But if you lay it sideways in a trench like that, it takes away a lot of space in the garden, especially if you have a dense planting in a raised bed or a container. And I decided, well, my real goal is to get the roots deep down to the moister soil. So I just want to go deeper, not sideways. So you're going to see me here digging a hole when I'm going to go deep. In fact, sometimes in my raised beds, I'll even get a pair of post hole diggers to go very deep, all the way to the bottom of my taller raised beds, and put these plants down in there. Today, I'm just going to go about as far down as we have cut the leaves away. Set this down in here, nice and deep. press it firmly into the bottom, cover it back up with that good mixture of compost and garden soil. Press it in firmly so that there's no air pockets so that those roots can grow, and mulch it back in. Here's my drip irrigation. Put that right here by the stem. By the way, we're going to talk about drip irrigation in a video that's coming soon. All right, now that we've got this plan in place, I can see that some of the low-hanging leaves are resting right upon the mulch. I don't love that because when I water, I don't want soil-borne diseases splashing up on them. So I'm just going to get my clippers here, and we're going to trim that up, both to improve air circulation around the stem and to remove what is effectively a pest superhighway up to the top of my plant. So we're just going to clean it up here a little bit. Okay, see a few more little suckers here, jumping off the main stem. So I'm just going to kind of trim those up there. There you go. Now let's go get the stake. We're going to train this as one main stem up a garden stake. And we want to get that in immediately so that we can position it near the tomato without disturbing the roots too much. I'd say right about there. Yep, that'll do it. Press that down firmly all the way to the bottom. And it's just that easy, folks. Here's our little tomato looking happy as a hog in mud. Give it a few days to get comfortable in its new digs, and it will start growing right up that stake, and we'll train it along. If you're interested, I'll have a video coming out next on just that topic.